Hello my friends and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 build guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering my very favorite druid build for Baldur's Gate, a build that I'm calling the Owlbear Takes Flight. This is the actual build I use for Jaheira, so I'm using her as the example character, but of course you can make it work equally well with Halsin or a main character druid, so I'll be doing a build guide level by level in case that you want to use this for a main character. This is an extremely powerful, tactician viable build with a ton of cool tricks, so I'm excited to bring it to you. I'm also going to be doing build requests, so if there's a character, archetype, or class that you've been having trouble making work or want to see a cool build for, let me know. I'm very happy to put together a video for it. Alright, so let's get into this build. So the purpose of this build is to have a character that gives you all of the cool stuff from Druid as well as some additional cool tricks while coming online at level 6, so we're going to be doing a build from level 1 to 6 to show you sort of the power spike of the build, and then I will show you two ways to finish the build, the most powerful way and sort of optimal way, and also a silly way that gets you some additional fun stuff but is certainly less powerful overall. Let's get started. So we are of course starting with Druid. For our cantrip selection, I think if you're starting at level 1, probably the best ones are Shillelagh and Thornwhip, but actually every Druid cantrip is quite good, so which cantrip you pick is, I think, not incredibly important. And of course, if you don't want to bring Shadowheart or another character that has access to guidance, you should definitely take guidance. I would take that over Thornwhip, because having a character casting guidance in your party is incredibly important. For our attribute spread, like for most casters, I think that the optimal layout is going to be 16 in our main casting stat, 16 in Constitution, and 14 in Dexterity. And then the remaining 4 points you can put pretty much anywhere. For a Druid, I think probably the best bet is 12 Strength, but another option if you are playing a main character is you could put these into Charisma. I wouldn't recommend Intelligence since you'll very rarely be making Intelligence checks in the game, and I think Strength is the best overall. Even though Druids replace their physical stats when they wild shape, you still want very good Dexterity in order to win Initiative in fights. Initiative is super important in this game, and having good Strength makes it much easier to navigate around the world in terms of your carry weight and jump distance and so on, and also lets you fight in combat when outside of wild shape. The HP that you get from Constitution, of course, is incredibly important, even if you're making heavy use of wild shape, because when you get knocked out of wild shape by taking damage, you'd still need to have HP. Alright, for our skill selection, I actually don't think these matter super heavily for even a main character, because Druid doesn't get access to the conversation skills, which are sort of the most important ones to have on a main character. Having athletics, of course, on Jaheira is always good, but I would definitely take Perception, and for our second one, something like Insight or Survival. One to avoid is Animal Handling, because almost every animal handling check in the game can be skipped just by having access to speak with animals, which of course Druids do. Also, if you aren't playing Jaheira for a main character, what race you pick, I think, is also pretty unimportant. Wood Elf is probably the generically strongest choice because of the additional movement speed, but pretty much any race will work well for this build. Halfling is also very good because Lucky is just an extremely good trait, and so on. Let's level up, and we are going to be taking our second level in Druid. And our subclass, even though we intend to make pretty heavy use of wild shape, is actually going to be Circle of the Land. One, I think this is just the best Druid overall in this game because of the changes to Circle of the Moon, and two, Circle of the Land gives us access to spells that will become pretty important later on. Our cantrip, of course, we're just going to take whatever, and our prepared spells don't matter, because you can change those on the fly, but you're definitely going to want Healing Word and Ice Knife as sort of combat spells. Entangle is really good, and then probably something like Long Strider, Enhanced Sleep, Speak with Animals, and so on. At level 3, we make our first sort of real choice, as well as getting access to level 2 spells, and that's which Circle of the Land circle we're going to take. When you're taking Circle of the Land options, the most important thing is to get access to spells that Druid otherwise wouldn't have access to. This way, you are going to increase your overall Druid's effectiveness and optionality more than any other option. There are only there are three Druid circles here that give you access to 2 spells that aren't otherwise on the Druid spell list. These being Coast, which gives you Mirror Image and Misty Step, Swamp, which gives you Darkness and Melt's Acid Arrow, and Underdark, which gives you Web and Misty Step. Of these, I think the most powerful option is probably Coast, followed by Underdark. Web is really nice to have because you can concentrate on it while wild-shaped, and Coast is really nice to have because Mirror Image and Misty Step are both excellent spells that will see you really well through the game. So I'm going to go with Coast here, but I think you could very easily take Underdark. Swamp, I think, is a distant third, and then all the others don't give you access to 2 unique spells, so you should avoid them. At level 4, we gain access to a feat, and our feat is just going to be to increase our wisdom. An additional cantrip is fine. At level 5, we get to take another circle, which gives us access to the key component of this build. The advantage to playing Druid is that you are able to concentrate on a spell while wild-shaped. So you can cast a spell, keep concentrating on it, wild-shape, and become a very powerful melee combatant. Circle of the Land Druid is so powerful because it gets access to the best spell to do this with, Haste. 2 circles will give you access to Haste, Arctic and Grassland, and of those 2, I think that you're slightly better off with Arctic. Neither give you a unique spell as their second spell, but Sleet Storm is probably more generically useful to have prepared than Daylight, although Daylight does have some uses in some zones in this game. But I think overall I would give the slight edge to Arctic. I definitely wouldn't fault you for taking Grassland though, but you definitely need to take one of those 2 because Haste is the most important spell in this build. And finally, at level 6, we get access to the namesake of this build, Polymorph Owl, or Wild Shape Owlbear. I'm going to drop out of character creation and show you why this is so much fun. So, let's imagine that we're entering combat. I'm going to go into turn-based mode here. What we can do is cast Haste on ourselves, which is extremely powerful in this game because in Baldur's Gate 3, it gives you just a whole extra action. This action can be used to cast additional spells of any level, or, more importantly for us in this case, Wild Shape. The Circle of the Land Druid doesn't Wild Shape as a bonus action, but with the bonus action from Haste, the extra action from Haste, we can Wild Shape into an Owlbear in our first round of combat, and then with our bonus action can activate Crushing Flight, which does a tremendous amount of damage and knocks an enemy prone with a 70-foot jump range. This allows us with Haste, because we've cast Haste on ourselves, to have 60 feet of movement, so we can, and this costs an additional 20 feet of movement to use, so we can move up to 40 feet. You have to err slightly on the low side because the Owlbear model is very big, so the game sometimes thinks you've moved a couple feet further than you have, and then jump up to 70 feet, moving 110 feet after whatever you're going to fight, and landing right on it. That being said, I think we can still do better. So let's dismiss this Wild Shape and give ourselves a little bit more. Oh, I gotta leave turn-based mode. Give ourselves some additional time to prepare. Let's say this is a fight that we know is coming. I'm going to prepare, Enhance Leap, and Long Strider. Long Strider, of course, we can cast at the beginning of the day. Very powerful spell to have access to, and just gives us 10 feet of bonus movement speed. This will stay during our wild-shaped form. And Enhance Leap we can cast right before entering combat, and that will triple our jump distance. What this means, when we have wild-shaped into our friendly pal, the Owlbear, is that we have a crushing flight distance of 210 feet, with additional movement beforehand of, that should be 50 feet, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yeah, 70 feet of movement speed, so we can move 50 feet and then jump, in theory, 210 feet. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't work quite as well as it looks like it should, because the game does seem to cap jump distance at 100 feet. So you can't jump quite as far as you should be able to, I think. But you can still jump 100 feet while moving 50 feet ahead of time, and then on your subsequent round make 2 attacks because you are still hasted. You'll have knocked everything prone. You can also then use your bonus action Rage or your Rupture. You can Rupture and attack, and you can Enrage yourself, which will give you additional jump distance in a subsequent round, although of course that will still be subject to the jump distance cap. This is super fun because you can move 50 feet, jump 100 feet, cover basically the full distance of any combat map, and begin a combat by hurling 10,000 pounds of owlbear on top of any enemy on the board. That being said, I think we can still do better, and I'm going to show you a couple silly tricks that let us do even better later on. But first, I think I'm going to quick save here and show you the sort of most powerful way to finish off this build, which is going to be really quite simple. We're just going to keep taking levels in Druid because we gain access to higher level spells. Other spells that you can consider casting and concentrating on during your wild shape form are Wall of Fire. Stone Skin is concentration and lasts until long rest. Gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. This also seems extremely powerful because you can precast it, and in some zones it is, but unfortunately it's not quite as powerful as it looks because most of the damage you'll be facing by the time you hit level 7 will be magical, so the Stone Skin won't have any effect. But against enemies you know have non-magical weapons, casting Stone Skin and then wild shaping and just being a wild shaped fighter is extremely powerful. At level 7, Circle of the Land, we probably want to take Underdark because this is the only one that gives us a unique spell in Greater Invisibility, and Greater Invisibility we can concentrate on ahead of time, and then attack from Greater Invisibility while in a wild shape form, which obviously is extremely powerful itself. Then we keep taking levels in Druid. For our feat, of course, we are going to continue to do ability improvement. And at level 9, Circle of the Land, we are going to take the Swamp domain, because this gives us access to Cloud Kill, one of the options for unique spells, and another really good one to concentrate on during Wild Shape. The other options that give you unique spells at this level are only Arctic, which gives you Cone of Cold, or Swamp also gives you Cloud Kill and Insect Plague, but I think we will take Swamp because you'd rather have Insect Plague always prepared than Contagion for the most part. It's more generically useful, and I think Cloud Kill is slightly better than Cone of Cold for this build, but Cone of Cold is also pretty good, so which of these you take I think doesn't matter a ton, but I would lean towards Swamp. Finally, we get up to level 11. And then for our 12th level, we have two options. We could either take a level in Druid and gain a feat, which would allow us to take most likely the Warcaster feat, although Tavern Brawler does give us some options for our wild shape forms, because the double strength modifier is added to your wild shape attacks. Now, for some weird reason, this only works on the attack portion and not the damage for Tavern Brawler. It doubles your attack modifier, but not your damage modifier when in wild shape. So it's less powerful than it looks, but still pretty good. Obviously, adding +4 or so to your attacks is quite strong. And Warcaster, of course, is excellent for any full casting class because it gives you advantage on concentration. Similarly, you could use Resilient, which gives you Resilient in Constitution, gives you proficiency in con saves, which allows you to make concentration checks more easily. Another option, if we prefer, rather than getting a feat, is taking a level in Cleric, and that gives us access to heavy armor. Cleric is probably the best one-level dip in the game because the heavy armor access is so powerful, as well as some of the class features that you get. In this case, I would suggest taking Life Domain, although Nature is the sort of role-playing choice for a druid and still gives you heavy armor, but Life Domain gives you the very powerful Disciple of Life ability, and druids have access to a lot of healing, so this will matter a lot. But let me quickly reload, because of course you are all here not for the most powerful build, but for the silliest build. And I'm going to show you how to increase our movement speed and how far the owlbear can fly even further. Because I'm recording, it's taking the game a second to load here, so apologies for that, but let's level up. And instead of leveling in Druid at this point, if we want the maximally silly build, what we do is level in Monk. Monk actually has quite a lot of synergy with Druid as well, because you get the unarmored defense feature, which allows you to add your wisdom to your AC. It doesn't work quite as well as you might think with Wild Shape, because what it does is set your AC to 10 plus your wisdom modifier plus the dexterity of the beast, rather than using the beast's natural AC. So most of the time, unarmored defense is going to get you like 1 or 2 bonus points of AC compared to the normal Wild Shape form, but that's still not bad, so definitely worth looking into Monk as well. Always a decent build. What you usually don't want to do is what we're going to do and keep taking Monk, because what that gets us is the unarmored movement class feature. Then we keep taking Monk, and I think that probably the best option for Monk here is Way of Shadow. That just gets you some extra mobility options. Another option, of course, is Way of the Open Hand if you want to actually perform combat with your monk with your druid / monk in humanoid form. Then you can take Way of the Open Hand. Way of Shadow also has a bunch of cool mobility options, so either one is good. And since the point of this build is to do silly stuff with mobility, I think we want Way of Shadow. And for our feat, we are going to, instead of taking an ability improvement and increasing our spellcasting modifier, we're going to take Athlete. Athlete lets us increase our jump distance by 50%. We could also move a couple points around to get an even number in strength, but that's not terribly important since we're going to be replacing it with our Wild Shape form anyways. We get extra attack, which unfortunately doesn't work in Wild Shape. And finally, we get improved unarmored movement at level 6 Monk, as well as Shadow Step, which allows us to teleport 60 feet as a bonus action. Put this all together, and let's cast our pre-buff spells. We get Long Strider, we get Haste, we get Enhanced Leap. Oh, we have to short rest, actually.
Enough to keep us going.
We Wild Shape into an Owlbear. And we can now, in theory, jump 315 feet. A normal jump distance of 143, and a theoretical jump distance of 315, which obviously is insane. This also gives us movement speed in a round of 85 feet, which of course we can do additional dashes and so on to increase. Let me enter turn-based mode here. And our crushing flight, as you can see, is still distance capped, unfortunately, so we don't actually in practice gain any more jump distance, but it is kind of fun seeing the huge number on the screen. And of course now we can move further before using it. We can move up to 75 feet, or 65 feet before using it, getting us a total distance of 165 feet traveled, and then knock everything prone on our arrival. Alright, my friends, I hope that you have enjoyed this look at the Owlbear taking flight. I think this is a really fun build. I do wish it worked the way that it should on paper, where you get 300 feet of jumping, but I understand why the game caps it at 100 feet, and 100 feet is plenty to traverse every arena in the game, so you don't need more distance, but it would be fun if we could do the Morrowind speedrun strat of jumping straight from the starting beach all the way to Act 3 or whatever. Jump over the road to Baldur's Gate. Alright, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, definitely please leave a comment, like the video, that helps a ton with the algorithm, and you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate builds, including silly builds like this one, and very powerful builds, and I will catch you next time. Cheers, folks. GG.